Now onto this. For thousands of domestic workers nationwide, this time of the year does not translate into family time. South Africa's sluggish economy has further plunged the sector into crisis. The latest employment data from Stats SA shows a persistent crisis for domestic workers in SA. In the first quarter of 2024, 7,000 domestic worker jobs were lost, bringing the total number of workers employed in the sector to 869,000. Now, for more on this, I'm joined by Mashiane from the United Domestic Workers of South Africa, as well as Thembi Stampu and Masemola, who also work as domestic workers. Ladies, a very good afternoon to you. Merry Christmas, and thank you so much for joining us today. Sis Pinky, perhaps let's begin with you, maybe with you just describing the current, just an overview of what it's like for domestic workers in South Africa today.
Good afternoon to Newzroom Afrika viewers. I don't know where to start. What I can say is that I was asking domestic workers in the group about this interview and asking them what will they expect from their employers. What they told me, there are those who are not paid their salaries. There are those who got half salary from VAL. They were given half salaries, and they said because they're going to hire some other people to work for them during this time. And according to the law, they are covered by the annual leave. They should be paid full salary. Irrespective whether they work 1 week in December or 2 weeks, they must get a full salary. If the employer decides to employ somebody else, the employer will pay more. They are not allowed to deduct from the domestic workers. So that's the situation. There are domestic workers who are enjoying as we speak. I remember in our group in Pretoria, they are not even responding because many of them, they've got their bonuses. They told me earlier they've got their bonuses. There are those who got double salaries, others 1,000 bonus from the employers. But honestly speaking, many domestic workers are not getting that. And as we are sitting here today on Christmas Day, there are domestic workers who are working. Are at work now. Others are cooking for employers and their families, while their children have no one to cook for them.
It's a very concerning current state of affairs for many domestic workers, like you painted. But from the employer's side, do you think it's an issue of ignorance? Is it people not being educated, or really just a disregard for the lives of domestic workers?
Many of them is disregard of the domestic workers because they know that this is the family time, they are with their families, and they know that domestic workers are also going to be with their families. If you give them half salary, how do they enjoy their Christmas? What to cook on Christmas and on New Year? There are others that are going to be paid when they come back in 2025. As we speak, they didn't get their salaries. So that's disregard and disrespect of domestic workers by many employers.
Ma'am Thembi, maybe let's bring you into this conversation. Perhaps tell me about your own personal situation as a domestic worker. What are some of the things that you would want highlighted, especially for those that employ domestic workers, and them knowing the rights of domestic workers in South Africa?
The employers know that they don't know the rights of domestic workers. They are just ignorant. As a domestic worker, I haven't seen any changes for domestic workers because on my life, I didn't think that I would work as a domestic worker, because I was watching my mother going through that pain. And I never thought me in this new democracy, I'll go through the very same pain that my mother went through. Because on May, I went through the pain that my mother go through. First of all, domestic workers who are doing, especially a sleep-in, because I went through that pain, who are doing a sleep-in. Those domestic workers, they are going through a terrible pain. Because if you are staying at work as a sleep-in, you will be thrown away. This is what happened to me on May. I was fired with immediate effect, accused of stealing the money in the bag. And that experience has brought what happened to my mother and me. Lucky enough, I've got a house in Johannesburg. When she fired me, me and my mother, That is why I told myself that I will never work as a domestic worker, but through circumstances, I am a domestic worker. Yes. I stayed in Spark Station for full 2 weeks, me and my mother, because she was fired. She didn't have a place in Johannesburg. So we stayed in the Park Station until she found another job, doing sleep-in again. I so wish that the government can just, even the unions, they are doing the best for us as domestic workers. But the government doesn't take care of listening to the unions. Because you know why they are not listening to the unions, because they've got the domestic workers in their houses. I'm not afraid to say this. They are oppressing domestic workers as well, those who are in parliament. And I so wish, I don't know what to say about our government and not supporting the unions, not listening to the unions. It is very painful to be a domestic worker. To be honest with you, I don't wish one of my daughters can go through the pain that
you went through as a domestic worker.
Yes.
Sis Maria, tell us maybe about your experience. Is it only just about the pain that you experience as a domestic worker?
Engakusho ngizokhuluma ngesizulu. Engakusho kunengi. Kusho ukuthi okusehlela kuthina njengama domestic worker. Banengi abanye abantu umuntu uyasebenza, nasebenza uthola ukuthi uthola imali engaphansi kakhulu. Kodwa uthola ukuthi nasebenza usebenza ama-hour amaningi. Abakwazi ukuthi bangazikhulumela bona abantu. So njengathi thina sine union kungcono kithi ngobe siyawazi amalungelo wethu. Mara basekhona abaningi abangakazi lutho ngamalungelo wabo, abasesenevalo lokuxoshwa emsebenzini. Kodwa ke ngeke sibablayibeki lokho ngoba omunye nomunye uyazazi ukuthi ufike kanjani emsebenzini yini emlethe emsebenzini. Kodwa mina engakufisa ukuthi bonke abasebenzi basezindlini kungathi bangajoyina i-union, bakwazi ukuthola amalungelo wabo futhi bazi ukuthi amalungelo wabo njengabasebenzi anjani. Kusho ukuthi mina singajoyina i-union, kusho ukuthi ngizithola ngikhululekile ngoba ngazi amalungelo wami. Futhi ngiyakhona kokusho ukuthi ngihlale ngikhulumisane nomchashi wami. Naye uyazi ukuthi ngiyazi ukuthi ngazi amalungelo wami.
So kuhlukile from the time bonganayo i-union.
Yeah, kuhlukile kakhulu ene since athola kokusho ukuthi kune union. Uyezwisisa yonke into uyayikhulumisana nami, akusafani nokuqala umuntu azovela athi mhlambe nje kuyisonto athi woza uzosebenza. Noma athi ngesikhathi esithiza isikhathi esinye nesinye afuna ukukubiza ngaso akubiza ukuthi wozosebenza. Mina ngisebenza ngilala khona. But angina nkinga nakufika isikhathi sokuthi ngiphume, ngiyakwazi ukuthi ngiphume ngiziyele kamereni. Uma ngabe kusho ukuthi mhlambe uyangidinga, uyakhona ukuthi angibize ukuthi hayi ngicela ukuthi ungisalele nabantwana isikhashana esingaka. Ekubeni kodwa uyazi ukuthi nabuya uzokwazi ukuthi angibhadalele leyo mali. Mara kusese nabantu abasesenenkinga yokungazi amalungelo wabo. Uyasaba noma umlungu azi ukuthi fanele ngabe ngiyala, mara uyahluleka ngoba uyasaba. Thina sima domestic worker kanengi asifuni ukusondela kuma union.
Yeah.
Abanengi bakhetha ukuya ku union nase kunzima sele aqoshwa emsebenzini. Kanti ngabe bajoyina isikhathi sisekhona bakwazi ukuthi bazi ngamalungelo wabo ngokuphelele.
Izinto zabo
so mina ngicela nethi kusho ukuthi abantu base South Africa noma kukuphi abafune ama union ngapha angakhona. Bazi ukuthi bafundiswe kabanzi ngokuthi amalungelo wabo akuphi
ahamba kanjani.
Kunenkinga enye engingathanda ukuthi ngabe iyashintshwa. Abantu asele babadala abasebenzayo kuyenze ukuthi umuntu uyasebenza kufika isikhathi sokuthi manje ngabe soyohola ipension. Ababakhululi abelungu ukuthi bayohola ipension bathole okungekwabo. Bayabasebenzisa uthola kusho ukuthi umgogo sekamdala ohluleka ngisho ukugibela eTaxini, uyahamba uye emsebenzini ngalo mthetho othi umuntu uma ngabe aziyekela yena emsebenzini kusho ukuthi akazothola lutho. Leyo nto leyo ibhlungu, ngingafisa ukuthi leyo mthetho fanele ushintshe. Bawenze at least ukuthi ke umuntu nangabe sekufika isikhathi sokuthi sefanele kokusho ukuthi ayothola ipension.
Umhlala phansi.
Umhlala phansi. Anikezwe okungekwakhe kuphume kuye nangabe usesenamandla ukuthi usaqhubeka nokuthi asebenze noma cha. Angaphoqeleleki njengoba kwenzeka uzwa ubhlungu uthola umuntu uphethe idondolo ngapho kodwa bathi uyemsebenzini. Uyosebenzani lo muntu ngoba uyambona ukuthi so uyahluleka. Why bangabakhulula abelungu kungoba bangafuna ukubabhadela.
Sispinkithi sikubuyise within this conversation. I mean, Uma Maria raises a very important point about the role of unions, but also most importantly, the education that domestic workers need to have with regards to the fact that unions are there, they exist to protect their rights.
Definitely. It's very unfortunate that when we invite domestic workers in our meetings, they'll never come. We'll go on the radio stations, we'll issue pamphlets and flyers and invite them. They'll never come. They'll keep those flyers and pamphlets. As soon as they got problems, they will contact us and come to the union. It's very unfortunate. If domestic workers were united before all these problems, we could challenge the government in many laws. For instance, as she was saying, the Basic Condition of Employment Act, Section 41, severance package, it says every worker must get a 1 week salary per year. I work for 30 years. After that, I must get a salary of 30 weeks. Really? While we are underpaid. Domestic workers leave work fragile, others they are disabled, going to die with nothing, because that's what the government says the domestic workers must get. It's very unfortunate. So if domestic workers were united, we could go to union building. We can even sleep over there at the union building. We can do anything. We can go to Labor Department, even during the Workers' Month in May, we can go to the Labor Department. But the problem is that when you call domestic workers, they don't come forward. And it is the voice of the domestic workers. If she says union, union is the workers, it is them, the union. Because I can speak and say many things, I can speak the whole night, the whole day, but if workers themselves don't take action, they will say that Pinky is talking too much. The workers are not saying anything. It is upon them. They are on their own in this government. After 30 years of democracy, they are on their own. They have to fight back. They have to exercise their right. They have to unite. It's now or never. The women of 1956 will never come back to rescue them. They did it for them.
So, Sis Pinky, what would you say is the disconnect between the unions and government? Where you're not finding each other, where you're able to advise government in terms of what really are the needs of domestic workers, and where government would also share what their shortfalls are?
We have tried. I remember we started this even during the time of COVID. We reached out to the minister, to the president. We never got response. Last year, we marched to the union buildings on the 5th of August during the Women's Month. They sent a Miss Michelle to come and fetch our memorandum was sent by the president. They said they will respond. They never responded to us. It's because even the government themselves, they overlook on domestic workers and the unions. They forget that they are a product of domestic workers, because now they are on the other side of the table. And because they are on top there, they look down on us. So we will fight, we'll mobilize, we'll continue. One thing for sure, we will never be discouraged. We are going forward, as they know that our luta continues, the struggle continues.
What long-term changes do you hope to see in the treatment and the recognition of domestic workers?
I want to see domestic workers being, first of all, treated with dignity. One worker said in Val, she wished that her employer can give her a present, a perfume wrapped nicely, like when she's doing to her friends, and also a salary, double salary. So what I would like to see is to see domestic workers being paid a living wage, treated with dignity. Because even the national minimum wage is not a living wage. It's a slavery wage. And they do accept it because they are mothers, they care, they are hard workers, they need to put bread on the table for their own children. They take it. But what I would like to see is seeing domestic workers working in smile, singing and humming, like as what she was saying here, I want to hear domestic workers saying something else rather than what Sis Thembi was saying here, showing that they are enjoying their work, because domestic work is a good work. It's very nice to look after somebody's house and after the children, to bring up those children and tell your children that now they are teachers, now they are doctors, while they were brought up by you. That's something big, but employers don't see it. Not all of them, let me put it. Yes, not all of them, but some employers don't see that. So I wish they can recognize domestic workers for their role, for what they do in their house, for that warmth that they bring in their homes while the domestic workers' homes are cold.
Ladies, thank you so much for your time. I certainly do hope that the plight for domestic workers will change in the near future, as, like you say, that nurturing role that you play in taking care of people's homes and raising their children. Thank you so much, Sis Maria, Sis Thembi, now Sis Binki, thank you so much for joining us on this Christmas Day.